Imagine if I was actually sparkly though. The teeth are hard to talk in, okay? Hello and welcome back. My name is Kristen, but today I am cosplaying as Edwina Cullen, Edward Cullen's cousin. Edward Cullen's cousin. Say that 5 times fast. I'm really excited because this is going to be my very first full series reading vlog, and I will be reading Twilight in honor of the 20th anniversary this year. Now, I have seen all the movies, but it has been a very long time. I remember the general timeline and the major events that happen in the movies, but I feel like reading the books is going to be a whole different experience. Naturally, I will be reading the main original series, Twilight, New Moon, Eclipse, and Breaking Dawn. And I will also be reading the companion novels and the novella that go along with it. This one's really big. This one's like about as big as Breaking Dawn, which is a little intimidating. The Short Second Life of Bree Tanner. This one takes place during the events of Eclipse, so I'm going to read this one right after I finish reading Eclipse. Oh my god. Midnight Sun is the retelling of Twilight, but from Edward's point of view, and I'll be reading this one after I finish Breaking Dawn. I'll be reading it after Breaking Dawn because I saw some comments on Reddit that were saying to be careful about reading this one immediately after Twilight, since it's essentially just the same story twice and you might get a little burnt out on it. And finally, Life and Death, which is the gender bend Twilight, and I will also be reading that one after I finish Midnight Sun. Although now that I'm saying my plans out loud, I'm a little worried about reading Midnight Sun and Life and Death back to back at the end of this, because I'll basically just be reading the same novel twice. Obviously there are differences, but it's still the same book, so that's a little concerning, and I hope that goes well. I hope I've planned that okay. This is a lot. I actually did not have any idea about Midnight Sun, Bree Tanner, or Life and Death. I thought it was just 4 novels. This is a lot to take on. I'm really excited to start this series because it's still so loved even after 20 years. And so many people were really stoked when I told them I was going to be reading it for the first time. So let's get started on the book that started everyone's obsession with sparkly vampires, Twilight. Hold on tight, spider monkey. Guess what time it is? Sparkly vampire season. So let's just start with honesty. I finished Twilight well over a week ago at this point. I'm kind of flying through the Twilight books without meaning to. They're just very fast reads, and they are the type of book where I can turn my brain off and just enjoy the ride, which is what I'm doing. We're not looking too deep into these books. I'm sure there are people out there, and there will be people probably this year who are also going to be reading them for the 20th anniversary, who are going to dissect the books a little bit more. That's what I started out doing, which is how I ended up with all of these tabs. I started off marking all of these things that just occasionally it was things that I was noticing, and then it went into like marking stuff where Bella is it's like parentification. It's essentially treating your kid as the parent because you're just not going to take responsibility for anything, and the kid has to not only raise themselves, but then raise any siblings that come later, also take care of the parents. So I was marking things like that. I was marking mental health issues. This book, there were some lines in this that jumped out at me at the very beginning, and mental health cries for help are throughout the entire series, but they're really bad in the first couple of books. And then I was also marking like just typical vampire lore according to the book, and then specific lore that relates to the Cullens, specific lore that relates to the werewolves, just things like that. And I marked a lot of stuff, and I would like to do a reread of these, I think, in the future. I didn't expect to want to ever read these again, but I think it would be kind of fun. They're fun books. Overall, it's just a good time. I did end up taking notes for Twilight, or at least I started to. I got to the point where they have the baseball game and then just kind of stopped taking all my notes down because I was like, you know what? I need to just step back and enjoy the books. I don't want to start digging too deep into them. If people are interested in that, it is something that I could do, but it's Twilight. It's sparkly vampires. We could dive deep into these, but overall, it's just a good time. And when I announced during one of my streams that I was going to be reading these for the first time, and then people would ask, and I would be like, oh, yeah, it will be my first time reading them. I've seen the movies, but it's the 20th anniversary, and I figured why not? People were really excited. And I was giving a little bit of like my thoughts during my streams while I was reading at least the first couple of books. And people were going, yeah, Bella is definitely the OG blueprint of Not Like Other Girls. And boy, is she ever. It's really hard to get past that immediate Not Like Other Girls trope for me right at the beginning. It stays that way. It becomes a little more bearable, I think, as the books continue. But this first book, we're just setting everything up. You know, she's new in town. Her parents have been divorced since she's like 1 year old or something. So that's not a new situation, but her mom has this new boyfriend, and like that's a whole thing because he's a baseball player and they're moving around. So Bella's like, well, I'll just go live with my dad up in Forks, Washington. And I know that it says that she's gone to spend the summer with him like every single year since she was a kid, but she's absolutely not excited. But she gets up there, new girl in town, new to the school. I think she's like starting in the middle of the school year too, which is really awkward. And she's already an awkward person, but everyone loves her, and it's a whole thing. It's kind of hard to get past that in the first book, but if you can overlook it and if you can keep moving forward, it turns out to be a good time because she's like, well, who are these people? It's the Cullens. And everyone's like, yeah, they're kind of weird. No one really sits with them. And throughout the book, Bella and Edward's relationship, he tolerates her because at first she smells too good, but we don't know that. We think that she just stinks to him or something because he doesn't want to sit next to her. He don't want to be anywhere near her. And then he saves her life so she doesn't get smashed by a truck in the school parking lot. And from then, we start developing into this lovely little relationship that carries on through the books and through time and in our hearts. If you are probably one of the few people who don't know what Twilight is, I'm sure at least everyone has either read the book or at least seen one of the movies. And if you haven't, you at least know what the story's about. We have a human girl who falls in love with a young man, and turns out he's a vampire. And she doesn't want to let him go. Her being that obsessed with him being obsessed with her, I think like vampires being super possessive is just kind of in their lore. But her being that obsessive, not possessive, but obsessive over him, that's concerning. Also a red flag. But she's completely obsessed with him. He's obsessed with her. And they fall in love and they stay together. But then there's also a werewolf. And the werewolf and Bella have grown up as kids together. But he didn't know he was a werewolf until like the vampires really started becoming a threat again. And now the werewolf and the vampire are trying to fight over Bella's affection. And in the end, she still chooses the vampire. That is her one true love. And he makes her into a vampire. But that's the entire story and not actually what happens in the first book. The first book is it's a lot of setup, just like many first books in series are. We get little hints of like, why people think the Cullens are so weird, why no one really ever talks to them, wants to sit with them. And instead of being weirded out and not wanting anything to do with the Cullens, Bella's intrigued. Bella wants to know more about them. Bella wants to know what's going on with them, like what's your damage, because everyone else is not repulsed by them, but they're kind of intimidated. There's just something off and they don't want anything to do with it. But meanwhile, Bella is drawn to them. And while Edward wants to stay away from her because he knows that he's a vampire, he's like, "You're a little itty bitty human. I'm a vampire. I could easily just smush you in one easy go." She doesn't want to let him go. She doesn't want to stay away. And he also is drawn to her and can't stay away from her. I knew it was a romance going into it. I don't really like romance at all. But in this, it's fine. If you just let the story be what it is, it's a good time. I have seen all the movies, but I have a hard time remembering what events happened in what book or what movie for me, but I didn't know the baseball scene was in this one, and that's always a fun scene to me. And while they're playing baseball, that's when we get our first introduction to one of the villains of the story, Victoria. But we don't know that she's a villain yet because we have James, Laurent, and Victoria. They're a small coven that they just kind of wander around. They smelled the Cullens and they wandered up and were like, "Hey, can we play with you?" And they're trying to hide Bella. The Cullens are trying to hide Bella and mask her scent as best they can because they are vegetarian vampires. Vegetarian. They only kill and eat animals. They don't kill humans. But that type of vampire, it's not very typical. And so they know when these three vampires come up, it could get bad really fast. Carlisle tries to kind of play it off and go, like, "Well, we're done here. We're going to wrap it up. Here, we're going to head back to the house, though. You can come with us." But they're trying to basically just push the vampires and like, "Let's go this way. Don't worry about what's going on back here. Let's go this way. You come with me and my buddies." But unfortunately, the wind changes and then they catch Bella's scent. As soon as that wind changes and James catches Bella's scent, apparently he's a hunter and all three of them are locked onto Bella. And so fortunately, we don't get like a massive throwdown fight right there. Well, that would have been fun to see. But I guess fortunately for Bella and fortunately for the Cullens, it doesn't come to that. And so they're able to kind of get the other vampires away, get Bella out of there. Unfortunately for Bella, they all three have her scent, and James goes hunting her. And so the end of this book, we have one of these rogue vampires chasing after Bella. And then, so the Cullens are trying to keep her safe. They're trying to basically throw these vampires off of Bella's trail by making like a fake path and hoping to chase them out of the city and like lead them in a totally different way. Doesn't work though. And they end up the Cullens bring Bella back to Phoenix where she's from. Her mom and the mom's boyfriend are out of town, so they should be safe. But Bella gets tricked into going to a ballet studio she used to go to when she was young. And she thinks James has her mom. So she's like, "Well, I'm not going to leave my mom there." So ends up at the ballet studio, realizes when she gets there, "Crap, he doesn't have my mom. I just got tricked. He's going to kill me and this is the end." Of course, Edward and a few of the other Cullens show up just in time. They end up killing James. They have to once you kill a vampire, you have to burn them so they don't come back. So they also end up burning the entire ballet studio down, but that's okay. Whatever you have to do in the name of safety. Maybe not fire safety, but vampire safety. We think that's the end of that because Laurent I forget if this happens in the first book or if it's in another one, but Laurent is basically like, "Yo, I don't want to be a part of this, okay?" And he bounces because he doesn't want to basically go up against the Cullens by himself. And he knows James was the leader of James was the leader of that coven, even though there were only three of them. If a fight starts, Laurent's going to have to fight with James and against the Cullens. And he's like, "I don't want any part of that noise." So he bounces. And you think, okay, well, that's one down. He's just going to go and do whatever. Victoria leaves. It ends up Victoria is James's partner, lover. Turns out that Victoria is was James's mate, but now that he's dead, she's gonna have to go after revenge. Clearly, that's what you gotta do. It's in the rule book. The Cullens are like, we might have some trouble later because we killed the one vampire, but for now, we're probably in the clear. So for now, we end up with a happily ever after between Edward and Bella. Sorry that this review feels very disjointed and is not like super in depth, but it was the 20th anniversary. The movies were a fun time, and I was like, I've never read the books. I kind of want to read them. And they're a fun time so far. I'm pretty far into the series right now, and I'm having a good time with them. So if you were hoping for more of a in-depth review and like breaking down each book, unfortunately that's not going to happen. Maybe in the future, because I definitely could see myself rereading these, which is not what I expected. But this time, we're just gonna, like most of my reviews, my thoughts, my opinions, my takes. This is not meant to offend anyone who loves this series. It's not meant to go after it and attack it and just bring it down. They're fun books. But I am going to have my opinions and my hot takes as a 38-year-old reading them for a first time. Let's quickly talk about how I plan to rate all of these books. As I said, I am reading these for the first time at 38 years old. I am very clearly not the target audience, just for the age range. You can enjoy a book at any age. That does not mean that just because you are older does not mean you can't enjoy a good middle grade or a good YA or a new adult. That's not the point of this, but I recognize I'm not the target age range, and I'm also not the target audience, mostly because this is a romance book, and I don't like romance. So, two things kind of working against me, but I thought it would be a little unfair towards the series if I were just to rate it the way I normally would for any other book. So I'm going to give each book two different ratings. It's going to get a fun rating, and then it's going to get a typical rating. The typical rating will be, if I were just to pick up this book and read it like I would, then whatever rating I would usually give it. The fun rating, how much fun did I have with this book? And I think for book number 1, Twilight, I would give this a typical rating. You know what? I'm going to give it a 4. I've had a lot of time to think on it, and I would give this a 4 because I think it does a really good job, honestly, of setting up the whole series, because there's a lot that happens, not only in the series, but in this book. Because I was not expecting this book to put Bella in such danger so soon, I guess. It shouldn't be surprising that we had like the bad guys, or like some of the bad guys, introduced at the end of this book, but to introduce them and then to put Bella in life-threatening danger, and you're going, oh shit, like, you're going, okay, she's not going to die because, well, I guess at the time of the book, you don't know if she's going to die or not, but now that we know the full series is out, I might go, okay, well, I know she doesn't die, but is she going to get turned into a vampire? Like, what's about to happen to this girl? So we have a really big thing that happens in the first book, and I enjoyed that. So I think I'm going to give it a 4. For the fun rating, I'm going to give it a 5, because truly, it's sparkly vampires. You got sparkly vampires, you got bad guy vampires. It's a good time. This is just a fun book. I think that's a really strong start. And because it's a first book, normally I wouldn't give first books a really high rating like that in a series, because most of the time they do start off really slow because they do have to set everything up. But I had a good time. Honestly, I'm kind of looking forward to the rest of the series now. So that's Twilight, book 1. Check it off. And New Moon is next in line. So let's keep reading. Okay, I am trying to do better, remembering to update while I read through books because I do want to have Twilight as an entire series reading vlog. And so far, I've not done a great job because I finished Twilight and I'm on New Moon. So, what are you going to do about that? But I am 424 pages in. So, last night I got to the chapter right where Bella is going back with Alice to Italy. They're gonna take on the Volturi, the Italy vampires. I'm flying through the books. I have been tabbing, but even with the tabbing, it's going pretty fast. They're quick reads, they're easy reads, and honestly, they're still pretty entertaining. So far, my thoughts on New Moon, I'm very concerned. Bella's mental health is obviously not the best. We learned that in book 1. In book 2, it's even worse because, you know, Edward's gone and she's just been downward spiraling. I don't know if she ever wasn't downward spiraling. Even when she's with Edward, she is so obsessed with Edward. That's not healthy either. So, you know, girlfriend's not doing so hot. Honestly, so far, I've been more annoyed and frustrated and mad with Bella. She keeps taking advantage of Jacob, and when Alice comes back, and as soon as she's in the house and she's updating Bella on like, oh, Edward thinks you're dead, and so then they get the phone call that Edward's gonna go talk to the Italian vampires and just basically ask them to end his vampire life. Bella freaks out, but Jacob's still there. He's in the house, and she gets really defensive about the Cullens all over again. It's very much giving, oh, I was with the cool kids, aka the Cullens, and now they're gone. They moved. And so this other group, well, they liked me a lot too, and they're pretty cool. I'll sit with them now. Like, they're the second best. But as soon as the people that I really like to hang out with come back, I'm just going to drop the second best people without a second thought. She needs someone to latch onto is what it is to me. She wants to latch onto someone, and she needs to be latching onto someone at any given time. And the fact that she is just switching loyalties left and right, that's just really kind of pissing me off, because as soon as Alice came back, she was on Alice's side. It wouldn't have mattered if Alice was the one that had been like killing all the people in the woods instead of Laurent. It wouldn't have mattered. She would have been like, well, I'm sure she had a good reason. She is willing to give so many excuses to the Cullens and just drop Jacob and all of the people that she's made friends with in the tribe and her friends at school. Like, as soon as Edward came into the picture, trashed the friends at school, the regular humans. So I'm just really frustrated and annoyed with Bella in this book, more so than the first one. And once again, I don't remember what things happen in which book. I remember the big overall events, like the baseball game. I remembered that just because that was fun to watch in the movie, but I didn't realize it happened in the first book. I remember the stuff about the Italian vampires. I think it's Volturi, I don't know. I think it's Volturi. And I remember that happening, and I remember the scene where, you know, he's gonna walk into the sun and he's gonna be all sparkly and everyone will see, and Bella, you know, basically shoves him back into the shade, so that won't happen. But I, for some reason, didn't think it happened so soon, because this is only book 2. But yeah, we are about to get on a flight to Italy. We're hopefully going to go stop Edward before he walks into the sun and reveals that he is a vampire to the good people of Italy and the tourists, because that wouldn't be good. That would end the series rather quickly. I have a little less than 150 pages left, so I will update you after I finish this. Okay, I literally just finished New Moon, and I'm trying to get better about, especially for full series reading vlogs like this, to update along the way, and then when I'm done with the book, to go ahead and say my thoughts, especially because I have the memory of a goldfish. So for Twilight, I actually did take quite a few notes. For New Moon, I didn't end up writing anything down, mostly because it was just really easy to read. So I kind of sped through it on accident. I also tabbed a whole bunch, and I feel like I may end up coming back later and referencing certain tabs. But overall, my final thoughts on this, just in general, are that Bella is a manipulative little bitch. I'm not the biggest fan of her. She is the OG, not like other girls. You know, wasn't the biggest fan of her in the first one, obviously, but I was able to have more fun with the book. Obviously, this book is not going to be fun because she is in a very, very deep depression for a majority of the book, really. Like, she never comes out of it, even in the end. Well, I guess kind of at the end, because at the very end of the book, where she has her epiphany of like her hearing Edward's voice in her head, she's like, oh, you love me. Okay, girl. I mean, it took you that long to figure it out, but she just is such a manipulative little bitch. She's used Jacob the entire time. Again, it's going from the, like, that person has plans and is busy, and that person's my second choice because at least I can have something to do and like someone to hang out with, but you don't tell them they're the second choice. As soon as the first person comes back, aka Edward, she's gonna drop your ass so fast, which is exactly what she did to Jacob. I feel like a lot of the folks that I've talked to when I say, hey, I'm reading Twilight for the first time, they end up saying, oh yeah, like when I first read these, I was on Team Edward. A lot of people just were not on Team Jacob, and maybe I don't think I'm on a team necessarily right now, but for this book, I'm on Team Jacob. I'm not saying he's great. We have a lot of issues. They all need to sit down and talk to a therapist, first of all. In this particular book, between the two of them, I'm on Team Jacob just because Bella is a manipulative little bitch. Again, in this book, Edward's one of those he's gonna do what he thinks is best for Bella, but really he's gonna do whatever he wants to do, he thinks is best, which honestly, now that I'm thinking about that, I don't think I've mentioned this yet because I haven't actually filmed my Twilight video. I have a lot to say. This is why we need to make notes. But there are a lot of times where Stephenie Meyers writes, is it Meyer? There's no S on the end, my bad. Stephenie Meyer writes Bella as like she feels like a child, or she feels so small, like a little kid. There's a lot of that, and it's so creepy. Every time she does that, it's so weird and it's so creepy. Or the author will have Bella put that onto another character like Jane. The entire time we get the scene with Jane, Bella's just like, she's like a little kid. She's like a child. She's like a little kid. I'm like, this is weird, dude. That's just weird and creepy and getting a little gross. Feeling like a child in relation to these teenage boys, except I know Edward is like super old, but you know, he's 17. And then Jacob, who's technically younger, but still he's a teenager. He's 16 years old, and you feeling like a little kid, and then you have these relationships. That's weird. It's just weird, and it's creepy, and it's gross. Why did we do that? Every time she would do it, it would weird me out. Each book is going to get 2 ratings. It's going to have a fun rating. How much fun did I have reading it? And then a more typical rating. What I would normally rate it if I just picked it up and wanted to read it for my, TBR of the month. This one, my problem is I understand she was in this really deep depression hole. I get it. Because on that note, I do like it's like at the very beginning where you just have a few pages of like October, November, December, and it's just a page with just the name of the month. And I remember one of my friends, when they first read this, God, like a decade ago, back in my 20s, and they said like, oh, that was a really interesting way to kind of indicate she's deep in it. She is deep in this depression hole and nothing matters. So just time is passing by, the months are passing by. And I like that. I like the way the author did that to indicate that nothing matters. Who cares? That's why we have these just pages with months on them. So again, I understand. Majority of the book, she's so deep in this depression hole because I think they were together like 6 months. And then he's like, all right, girl, well, yeah, I totally don't love you anymore, bye, and bounces. And so she's got this giant hole in her heart. She is a teenager. We're going to be dramatic about it. It didn't get fun for me until it was time to leave for Italy. That first big chunk, because that didn't happen until like, when was my last update? When is that? It was like 400 something. Where is it? Page 424. That's when we have Alice and Bella jetting off to the airport, getting on the plane, going to Italy, trying to stop Edward from revealing that he's a vampire to all these people. And then we get to the Volturi. Tori? I still can't say it right. Volturi. And we meet them. We see what certain powers some of them have. And that was interesting too. The book for me wasn't fun until that part. We were kind of just meandering along, and I get it. She's upset. She's in a depressive state. I understand. But I had to slog through over 400 pages of her just whining and being manipulative. Not just whining, but being a manipulative little brat over and over and over. And then we finally get to where that's, now we have another problem. I know Victoria's around and but we don't see her. We have a moment with the vampire Laurent. I'm probably saying his name weird because I want to say it with a French accent, but I also don't want to sound like an asshole. So we have a moment with him and he's gonna kill her and then be like, I'll just say sorry to Victoria later, and then Jacob and his pack come and run him off. Oh, and they kill him. That it's such a small piece that it's really not very exciting. There's not a lot that goes on. So I really didn't have as much fun with this book. Really had the most fun when we had to go off to Italy and you could feel the urgency. So again, these books, they're super easy to read. By no means the best thing I've ever read. They are fun enough when there's something happening and there's a big, urgent, bad thing about to happen that it does keep me entertained. And I'm like, oh shit, are we going to be okay? We need to get out of here. Is she going to make it in time? Oh no, is he going to reveal that he's a vampire to all these people? It's still intriguing enough to keep me reading, to be like, even I know what's going to happen. I've seen the movies. I know she makes it in time, but even still reading it, you can feel the urgency. And I did enjoy that. But up until that point, those first 400 plus pages, I was like, are we going to have anything happen in this book? Like, you mentioned the Volturi, but are we going to see them? Or are you just going to mention them? Mention these two other vampires that are hunting you, and really nothing happens in this one, and I have to wait until the next book. The fun score for this one, not going to be very high. And honestly, the overall rating for this also probably not going to be very high. Also, I know this review is kind of all over the place. I have a question. At the end of Twilight, well, technically at the beginning of New Moon. That's wrong. It's at the beginning of New Moon. Edward's like, hey girl, we can't stay here any longer, so we gotta bounce. Bye. And, they leave. I don't think we ever know where exactly they go. We get hints here and there, but then when Alice shows up, months later, and she's like, oh my God, Edward thinks you're dead. And she fills Bella in on what's been going on, and that he was down, Edward was down in Brazil, which we find out later it's because he was tracking Victoria. But Alice is telling Bella where their family settled, what was going on. At least on my book, in page 400, it says Carlisle was working nights in Ithaca and teaching part-time at Cornell. That's in New York, okay? Esme is restoring a 17th century house north of the city. I'm assuming that means in New York, because the family is going to stay together, as best they can. They're going to stay in the same area, because you have Jasper at Cornell, Emmett, Rosalie go to Europe, but then they're coming back. Alice is just doing personal research. But then at the end of the book, in the epilogue, the Cullens are back, and so they kind of have to make up a little bit of story. Carlisle goes back to work at the hospital in town. It says the hospital welcomed Carlisle back with eager arms, not even bothering to conceal their delight that Esme had found life in LA so little to her liking. I thought they were in New York. What do you mean life in LA? As soon as I read that, I know that's such a small thing. When I read that, I was like, hold on. I thought they had gone to New York or something. So I just spent the time to flip back and find the page where it says, oh, here's where they went and here's their new cover, what they're doing. And it very explicitly says Ithaca. Ithaca's in New York. There is no Ithaca in LA. LA, the city, and the cities surrounding it, there's no Ithaca over there, okay? I lived in Southern California for about 6 years. I know that's not a long time, but it's long enough to know there's no Ithaca over there. I even Googled it to see if I was wrong, and there's like an Ithaca College, Los Angeles, but it sounds like a community college or something, and that's a singular university. Because again, they reference Cornell. Cornell is in Ithaca, New York. Again, I know that's a small editing error, unless I missed something where between page 400 and like 5 something, where was this? Unless I missed something, because in my book, when Alice is telling Bella where they were, that was on page 400. And the epilogue for me starts on page 548. Unless I missed something in that 148 pages that, oh, they started out in New York and then they ended up moving to LA for some reason. Did we not bother to check? What happened there? Was the original plan for them to move to LA? Which makes no sense. LA has pretty damn good weather. They get the June gloom, and occasionally it does get cloudy and kind of rains, but it's really sunny over there. Why would that have been the original plan? That's the only thing I can think of, is like somehow the original plan was for them to move to LA, which I keep thinking like, oh, across the country, but they were in Washington, so they just would have gone south. But it doesn't make any sense anyway, because there's going to be a hell of a lot more sun in LA than there would be in New York. That just bothered me. I know it's such a small nitpicky thing, but come on, man. We can't keep our places straight. And that one just doesn't even make sense. Overall, I had a lot more fun with Twilight than I did with New Moon. I'm still trying to come at these books from a fair viewpoint because I've never read these before. I do think they are, well, they're definitely not meant for me because there's a lot of romance and I don't care for romance. Even besides that, I don't think the point I am now in life, these are not for me, and I understand that. It's just supposed to be for fun, and I'm also trying to come at them in a way that this is just for fun. But it's really hard to deal with Bella when she just manipulates and leads Jacob on over and over and over, because I'm sorry, you can't sit here and tell me that Edward's like, oh, she'll get over me. Like, I'll tell her that I don't love you anymore. Go on, get out of here. And then he ghosts her. Like, that she's just gonna get over it. Let's be for real. He knew that if he were to come back 2 days or 2 years, that she would immediately go back to him. He knows that. I mean, she sure as hell knows that. She's, even when she sits there and is like, oh, maybe I could change Jacob if you gave me time. There was a line in there when she's trying to keep him as like more friendship or like treat him like a brother, but then she still flirts with that line, pun intended, of a potential relationship. You know, if she's like, oh, well, if I'm actually going to give up on Edward and give up on that part of my life, I just can't with her. Girl, like, come on. It's really hard to be on her side in any of this, to be honest, with the way that she acts and the way that she treats people. And again, I understand we were in a very deep depression hole for a very long time. The way she is as a person and as she is written, that came before the Edward depression when he dumped her, ghosted her. She's still like that when he's back, because with the manipulation, she has the audacity, let me tell you, to act the way that she does. In the very end, in the epilogue, what is his name? Edward. Edward drives her home from work, but Jake is there, and he has something to say about the treaty between the vampires and the werewolves. And Charlie starts yelling, you know, like, get in this house, I know you're home. So she's trying to be like, Edward, leave it, like, we gotta go, I gotta get in the house. And she looks back at Jacob, and you promised, I reminded him desperately, still friends, right? Girl, the audacity of you to act like that. No. go. I just couldn't. So this book, a lot less fun. Can't with her. I just can't. For this book, I'm Team Jacob, but I wish we had had more action. The Volturi stuff, that was the most exciting the entire book was. So I'm hoping in the next one, which is Eclipse, I think, I'm hoping a lot more happens. We know Victoria is still on the loose. We have the vampires who are going to hunt her, or at least Edward claims that he's going to go hunting after her. And then the werewolves are hunting her. They both want her off the land and gone and out of the state. But we know that's happening. And then they've made the promise to the Volturi that, oh yeah, we're going to change Bella into a vampire. Don't you worry about it. So then we have that situation. So I'm thinking now that she's 18, because she turned 18 in New Moon, and she mentioned only a couple months left until graduation. So I'm thinking in the next book, that's when we get her graduation and she's going to be like, all right, man, turn me into a vampire. But she's probably going to have to agree to marry him because he asks her at the end of the book, oh, well then, will you marry me? And she thinks he's goofing. And he's like, girl, I'm not goofing. For me to make you into a vampire, you're going to have to marry me. Maybe we'll get graduation, marriage, vampire, showdown with Victoria in the next one. Possibly also showdown with Volturi? I don't know. We're going to have to find out. New Moon, the fun rating, I'm thinking we're going to give it a 2.5. The 0.5 is because we went to Italy and we got threatened by royal vampires. The more everyday rating, I'm going to give it a 3. I almost said 2 because I'm so done with this girl. I think that's fair. If I change my mind by the time I start the next book, which I think I might start tonight, if I end up changing my mind, I'll let you know. But I think for right now, the fun rating is going to sit at a 2.5 and the everyday rating will sit at a 3. Hopefully, I can deal with Bella better in the next book. Hopefully, she gets less, well, I was going to say less annoying, but I don't think that's going to happen. Maybe she'll turn the audacity down a few notches though, because girl, the audacity with which you manipulate people and then act like you don't know what you're doing, that ain't it. That is New Moon. I hope Eclipse is the next one. It is. Eclipse is up next. We'll see what happens. Maybe we'll get more Volturi. Maybe they'll show up and we'll have... We're going to definitely get a showdown, I think, with Victoria. I think at the very least, we're going to have a showdown with Victoria in the next one. And maybe like a little showdown between the werewolves and the Cullens, because that would be kind of fun too. Okay, on to the next book. I look a hot mess. I look like a gremlin, but I have officially started, I don't know why I'm holding it like that. I've officially started Eclipse. You can't see it. I've started Eclipse. I am only like 94 pages in, so not super far. I am currently running sprints. Hopefully, is there anything on my, no, nothing embarrassing on my desk. I am currently running sprints right now, but I have officially started Eclipse. I am only about 94 pages in, so I'm not super far, but I am going to try to do better about doing little updates as I go. So far, we had like a mini discussion with a bunch of my friends while we were in chat, and everyone in chat that I was talking about it with, they've already read Eclipse. Some of them have read the full series. My friend Molly is working her way through the series and she's read Eclipse, but she hasn't read Breaking Dawn yet. So I asked everyone who had read the Twilight books. There were about, I think, 4 people in chat at the time that had read all of them, or at least read through Eclipse. And I was like, can you guys rank your Twilight book favorites right now from like most favorite to least favorite? And everybody put Eclipse as their least favorite. And I was like, that's a little concerning. People were like, it's not that we hate it. Like, we don't hate Eclipse, but it's our least favorite out of all of the books. And I was like, well, I only have 2 books to go by. I've only read Twilight and I've read New Moon. And I finished New Moon yesterday, which was Tuesday the 2nd. I had to check the date because I wasn't sure. I am reading these pretty early just because I wasn't sure how long the books were going to take me. So I did start like a couple days before September in order to have the books read and have all my thoughts, and then I could like make the video in time for the end of the month. But that's not what we're talking about. What we're talking about is that I finished New Moon yesterday, Tuesday, September 2nd, and coming right off of New Moon, I'm not a big Bella fan. As I was telling everyone in chat, I was like, coming off a New Moon, my attitude towards Bella is, you can't sit with us. You cannot sit at our lunch table, okay? Because I have issues with your attitude. I've got issues with how you manipulated Jacob. None of them are perfect characters, but the absolute audacity and the manipulation towards Jacob, I'm like, girl, what are we doing? So coming off of that, I didn't have a lot of high hopes. I am easing back on tabbing because Twilight and New Moon, I tabbed quite a bit. And I have tabbed a couple, I don't know if you can even see it. I've tabbed a couple things, but I'm easing back on the tabbing, and I think I'm going to just move forward with just trying to have fun. I wasn't looking super deep into these books in the first place. I'm gonna ease back even more. These books are just to have a good time, to have fun, and that's what we're gonna try to do. So I'm looking forward to this because, especially since like everybody who had read the books in chat, they were like, bottom tier, least favorite out of the entire series, which is interesting because in this one, the little summary said that there's vampires like attacking people in Seattle, and that's kind of what we open with. We open with Bella being grounded, obviously, after all of the stunts that she pulled in New Moon. Charlie is letting up a little bit, so she's allowed a little more freedom. Her and Edward just got back from Florida visiting her mom, but he was really intent on getting her out of Forks, and I was like, well, I already know why. It's got to be because something's going on. I was like, I'm assuming it has something to do with Victoria, which it did. Victoria was in town. Edward just wanted Bella out of the city just for the weekend, and they almost caught Victoria, but Emmett crossed over the werewolves, like the territory line, and so there was a scuffle and she got away again. Not much has happened so far. So far, I'm fine with it. It does seem to have a bit more action right at the beginning, and I think that was probably my biggest complaint with New Moon. I understand she was in a depressive episode that lasted for a very long time, and she's not going to be able to claw her way out of it very easily. So I get it. But even with her spending more time with Jacob, and we see that relationship develop and all of the things that kind of pull her out of the depressive episode, and then, all the stuff with her going to Italy and saving Edward at the end, it was really slow. And it felt like it was a lot more up here. I guess that's just not really what I wanted out of these books. I'm like, if you're giving me sparkly vampires and werewolves, I want to see that. I want to see the action. I don't want to stay in this girl's head. I really don't want to stay in her head, okay? Give me the vampires. Give me the werewolves. Vampires are hunting people. Vampires are hunting vampires. Werewolves are hunting vampires. Like, that's what I want to see. Okay, so I think that was my biggest complaint, and it does seem to be a little more action-packed in this one, but we're going to step back and we're just going to have a good time with it. But I'm going to get back to sprints. I'm going to see how much more I can get read. Hopefully more stuff happens. So I ended up making it halfway through Eclipse yesterday, and so remember how I was Team Jacob in New Moon? Now it's a bit much. So I wasn't really Team anybody except for maybe Charlie, but no longer Team Jacob. We need to calm down. I'm liking this one more than New Moon so far, because everybody else I've talked to has rated Eclipse as their least favorite, and it was consistently the bottom of everybody's list. I don't know what to do with that information. But as I was telling some of my friends yesterday during sprints, like for New Moon, most of it was up here. It was in Bella's head. I get it. She was going through it. But nothing really happened in the book until the very end when they had to go to Italy to go like meet with the Volturi and save Edward, all that kind of stuff. There's already been a lot of stuff happening in Eclipse. Like Victoria's around, there's newborn vampires rampaging through Seattle and murdering people left, right, and center, but they don't know who is creating the newborn vampires. The Volturi also may be involved because at this point they should have showed up, like there's a lot of shit going down. There's a lot happening, and I think that was my biggest gripe with New Moon. There wasn't enough action. You have werewolves and you have vampires battling each other, and they're hunting each other, and they're hunting like vampires hunting vampires and stuff. Like, that's what I want to see. I don't really want to just be in somebody's head for like 85% of the book. So I think that was my biggest gripe, and probably why I'm liking Eclipse more. We still have half the book to go, so for all I know, the second half of the book might be incredibly annoying and just take a turn that I don't like, and maybe it'll end up at the bottom of my list. We still have half a book to go, so I guess we'll see. There were a couple things I'm still tabbing, but not nearly as much because I don't feel the need to. There were a couple things I noted yesterday while reading. There's a lot of things that bother me with this book, but these two things in particular, I just want to make a note of while I remember. In Eclipse, we get Rosalie's story, and she tells that herself to Bella. It's really heartbreaking. And again, I remembered from the movie, but just seeing the words on the page, it's sad. In that story, Rosalie mentions that she had this friend Vera, Vera, and her friend Vera had a kid, and she's like, that's all I really ever wanted. I just wanted a family. I wanted a kid. I want to be a mom. The story, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so sad. This is heartbreaking. But then she finds Emmett, and I'm like, oh, okay, it's, still sad because she didn't want this life, but it's a little bit better because she found Emmett. But then at the very end, when she's like, can you guess why I stopped the bear from eating Emmett? He reminded me of Vera's little Henry, so her friend's kid. The way Emmett looked reminded her of her friend's little boy, her child, and that's why she wanted to save him. That's weird. To me, that's weird. It made it weird. I think it's supposed to be like sweet. She wants to take care of someone. I think maybe that's where the author's going with it. Like, oh, she wanted someone to take care of. She wanted a family to care for, and she wants to care for Emmett. And it brought that memory back. Seeing Emmett and how he looks so much like her friend's little boy. All Rosalie wanted was just a family to take care of. And so it just so happened that Emmett looks really similar to the kid. But all Rosalie really wants is just to take care of a family. That's, maybe that's where she was trying to go. But that's not how it comes off to me. And it's just really creepy. It made it weird. Okay? So we didn't have to do that. Why? That bothered me. Sorry if that's an unpopular opinion, but that bothered me. This next one is not meant to upset any Team Edward people, okay? That's not my intent. None of this is to upset any Twilight fans, okay? These are just my opinions and my thoughts reading through this series for the first time, okay? Keep that in mind, please. I know that Jacob, in this one at least, he's the reason I'm not really on his side anymore is because he is becoming so territorial and so overprotective and in a weird way about that to Bella. And I'm like, bro, you need to back off, okay? Step back. Edward's no better, okay? Edward's no better. I don't know if I have made this up in my head. I'll have to go back maybe in the last chapter and kind of skim, but I'm pretty sure, unless I've made this up in my head, Jacob even relates how overprotective Edward is towards Bella to being in a controlling relationship. And honestly, I'm agreeing with that right now. Things where she's trying to get up the courage to call Jacob again, thinking about calling her friend, but she's like, oh, I really need to call and I need to talk to Jacob. Something like talking to her friend again, being a good person versus making Edward furious with me. I understand that vampires and werewolves, it's the battle of the century, but concerning, red flag. And then when Jacob shows up at school and he wants to talk to Edward and like that whole thing, that was so stupid. Jacob looked like an idiot, but Edward's like holding her back because she kind of wants to go and like give Jacob a hug or something. Edward's shielding arms had become restraints. And then when Edward goes hunting with Jasper and Emmett, and Alice like fake kidnaps her for a sleepover for the time that he's gone, just like the 2 days. So she has to cancel plans with Jacob. But then Jacob shows up when Bella gets to school, I think on like Friday, and he like rides up on his motorcycle and he's like, Bella, let's go. And so she runs to him and they end up spending the day together. He's like, well, what do you want to do? And she, anything. I laughed back. It felt great to be free. And I understand that part. You could be like, Edward and Alice, all of them are both trying to keep her in the Cullens house to keep her safe. I understand. I get it. I understand. To keep her safe, but they are like, you have to stay here. We can't let you out of our sight. You basically can't leave the house. You either are at school or you're at our house. You can't go anywhere. She's on lockdown. That could also be like, it's great to be free. So I get it. Why is she under lockdown while Edward's gone? Because he's so damn overprotective. It's not a good look, okay? So I'm not on anybody's team right now except for Team Charlie. Again, I'm not trying to upset anybody. Not trying to upset anybody from the fandom, but these are just the thoughts going through my head while I'm reading this for the first time. And I still have half the book to go. Maybe I'll change my mind. Edward is lightening up. He is being more pleasant towards Jacob and towards the werewolves in general, especially when they've like spotted Victoria, like shit's going down. Somebody broke into Bella's room and now they have her sent because they took her clothes. And now they're trying to work together a little bit more. So I will give the Cullens and I will give Edward that. Jacob's still being kind of a dick, but you know, I will give Edward points. He's trying. I get that it's supposed to be, oh, he just loves her so much. It's just such a, you know, this love that you can't even describe. But that's not how it comes off, okay? It comes off real creepy and real weird sometimes. I'm still enjoying it. I'm still having a good time. I'm still Team Charlie right now. Out of everybody, I'm Team Charlie. Also, I'm really stoked that we're going to be fighting newborn vampires. It's literally going to be like a vampire showdown. And I'm really excited. It's like an action movie. I'm treating this like an action movie, and so I'm getting more excited. I want to see the fighting. I want to see a little bit of bloodshed. Do vampires bleed? Or do they just like, you know, their arms and bodies just break apart? I guess we'll find out in the fight scene. Not Bella saying, that's mean, but Jacob coming back with, so are you. That one fucking got me, dude. And also, is it untrue? Where's the lie? Okay, but Jacob kissing Bella against her will is not cool. That part was not okay. Okay, Eclipse. I did end up filming a couple clips that you probably saw right before this, and it was just a handful of things that bothered me in this book. Mostly the whole Emmett reminding Rosalie of her best friend's kid, and that's why she changed him and saved him. Edward and Bella's relationship and how Edward reacts to Bella and how she reacts to his reactions. Her being so fucking terrified of making him upset. Bit of a red flag. You can't say it's not. But I did finish Eclipse, and this is the one that has the big showdown between all of the newborn vampire army that was created by Victoria and the Cullens. And I don't know if it's because the movie has the ability to show everything. Like if you took maybe not everything that happened in the movie, not all of the details, took that fight scene and translated it to pages, it would make the book longer. The whole point of the series is to focus on Edward and Bella, and the fight that happens down in the field between the rest of the Cullens and the werewolves and the newborn army, that it does have to do with Bella and Edward, obviously, but because they're not down there, it's not the main focus. But I really was expecting to see something from that battle, and the fact that absolutely none of that got showed, we just get a little bit relayed through, it was Seth, I believe, was the werewolf that stayed with Edward and Bella up at that little campsite. We just get a little bit of the start of the fight relayed from the other werewolves to Seth to Edward. We don't see any of it. The big battle scene that we get is between Victoria and Riley going up against Edward. Victoria's like, I know what's going on. I know that little human is gonna be with Edward. I'm not dumb. She's not. She's single-minded, but she's not dumb. So they track Edward and Bella up to the little campsite. They weren't expecting the werewolf. So the whole werewolf thing, that was a good tactic, because Victoria and the newborns, none of them, they don't have the scent. They don't even know that werewolves exist, so they definitely weren't expecting it. That's the big showdown that we get, which is fine. Again, they're the two main characters of the series, so I understand. But it was a little disappointing that we don't get any part of the big battle scene. We just have them showing up at the very end because they know the Volturi is going to be showing up after the battle, because Alice has foreseen that and they need to get back down there. That part was a little disappointing to me. Few things that bothered me in Eclipse. While Jacob was tolerable in New Moon, he was absolutely insufferable in Eclipse. Like, that alone for me is a big reason why I could see people putting this book at the bottom tier of their rankings of the Twilight books. Like, all of the werewolves, they have this weird, I hate using this phrase so much because it sounds so incredibly stupid, but they have this weird, like, alpha male thing going on. And I know the author would probably argue, like, oh, well, it's because they're wolves and the wolves have an alpha that they have to follow. They have the leader. But that's exactly how they act. They act like a stereotypical caricature. I can't say that word. It's so fucking hard to say, but it's exactly what they represent. Just a cartoon version of the alpha male, like these super badass dudes. It's so dumb. It's that situation and how they act and how they speak is so stupid. It's not only stupid, it's really cringy. It's so dumb. But for him to do maybe not a 180, but such a change, because his character in New Moon is such a different character than in Eclipse. And I'm sure that people who are going to do like a deep dive into it are going to sit here and be like, well, it's because of this and that and him wanting to fight for Bella. Like, he knows in the back of his mind she's never going to be over Edward. She's really going to actually choose him forever. But he thinks he still has a chance. And, you know, the whole pack mentality thing. And he's supposed to be the alpha, but he said, no, girl, I don't want to be the alpha. I don't want that responsibility. And Sam's like, all right. And so he's technically the beta, but he should be in charge. And it's just the wolf inside him. Please. It's goofy, okay? As much as I am enjoying these books, they're just a fun, good read. That's so goofy. So goofy. That was probably my biggest complaint, is the way his character is, and it's such a change. Like, with no transition, it's just like, here he is in New Moon and he's tolerable, and here's the new book and he's an asshole. Okay. The other thing that bothered me is yet again Bella's stupidity. In the movie, I remember on purpose, like, I don't know if it was her plan. I can't remember whose idea it was, but she makes a little cut on her palm. While they're going to the campsite, they make a little trail, like her and Edward, through the forest that leads to the field where all the fighting's going to happen. And she's like putting her hands on the trees and on the plants so that her blood is left behind on all of these places that she's touching, and the newborns will just lose their mind, head straight through the forest to the field, and that's how we can make them all go in one direction. But in the book, she has heard a story from Billy, Jacob's dad, about essentially how the werewolves came to be, and like this big final sacrifice of one of the wives of one of the original werewolf leaders. She's called the third wife, and in order to distract like the vampire that's attacking her husband, who is now really old in the story, like the third wife ends up like making a cut so like the blood falls and the vampire's distracted, and she ends up saving her husband and the whole tribe and all of that. Bella, that just resonates with her. She's like, oh my God, I could be like the third wife. I should sacrifice myself for my new family. She's gonna try to be a martyr. It literally would not help anything with her being on the field. She keeps going, I should be down there. I should be on the field. What would that help? But apparently this really resonates with Bella, and she wants to be like a sacrifice during this fight. And I'm going, me and everyone else in the Collins are going, girl, what would that help? How would that help with you being on the field? Because in her mind originally she's like, oh, well, they can smell my blood and it apparently has this weird reaction on all the vampires in the entire world. And so it would bring them straight to us. And girl, how would that help? You were literally just going to get in the way. That makes no damn sense. And then she gets the bright idea because like she's traipsing along. I guess they were going to the campsite and she falls. It's convenient, I will say, how, oh my God, she's such a klutz. But when it comes down to the wire, she needs to not be klutzy and not be all falling all over her own feet. She doesn't. It's only when she's not in danger that she doesn't fall. Very convenient. I just needed to point that out as well. But they're going to the campsite and she falls down, like, I don't know, scrapes her hand and gets the brilliant idea of, oh, what if I just like leave a blood trail basically through the woods, which is what they end up doing. I mean, that's such a much better idea than you just being on the field in the middle of fighting between all of these vampires, half of whom really just want to suck you dry. That made no sense. She was dead ass convinced that her just being on the field would be fine. She really was, until the idea of like making a little trail through the woods to the field happened upon her. What would that have helped? That was so dumb. Bella just consistently goes between being written as someone who is really observant, pretty smart, can figure things out, and then just really stupid. Really stupid. How you just standing there in the field, obviously, yes, is going to draw them. They'll smell you. They already had her scent from the clothes that they stole, and apparently her blood drives all vampires out of their minds. But you just being there on the field is a liability. What on earth would that help? And then she just literally happens to fall into the idea of like creating the trail. It drives me nuts. It's either she's really observant and really smart or a complete ding dong. Like, you can't have a character that's both. And it's not one of those things where, oh, she's book smart but not street smart and just kind of dumb in the real world, but in academia, she's got it going on. No, this is just in general. In general, she is both a ding dong and really observant, and that doesn't make any sense, which is another reason why I have to like step back. These are my opinions and these are my thoughts as a first-time Twilight reader, and I think that's just a goofy way to write a character. Okay, overall, I could probably see why folks rate this lower down, like when they tier rank their favorite Twilight books. It was fine. This one had, for me, more action. You have to gear up for the newborn fight, and then we don't see the fight again, something that really annoyed me. But we do get a pretty good fight with Edward and Victoria, and I do like that we got a little more interaction with the Volturi. You know something's up. You know they're going to play dirty. We do get a little more information in the novella, The Second Life of Bree Tanner. This one it had more going on. There was a lot ramping up to this big fight and more to do, more going on than in New Moon. I think for the fun scale, the fun rating, I will give Eclipse a 3.5. I was prepared to give it a higher fun rating, but because they didn't show me any of the big fight, I'm dropping my rating. So fun scale gets a 3.5, which I think is pretty fair because you have a lot with like the vampire army ramping up and they're trying to plan everything. We get a little behind the scenes of how they're trying to prepare for it. And then we actually have the big showdown, at least with Edward and Victoria. We get more of the Volturi and all of their nonsense. 3.5. On the more typical rating scale, I think I would give this a 3. Again, most of it has to do with the fact that we did not get this big fight scene that I was expecting, which I know sounds kind of goofy, but let's be honest, this whole series is just a silly, goofy time, okay? Can't take it too seriously. I did enjoy getting a little more background on the werewolves and why they even exist. And then we get more of going, like ramping up towards Bella and Edward's wedding and like how all of that is going to play out. Because you know they're going to end up together. Then we do end with Jacob. At the end of it, I was like, oh, is he just going to accept this and then be on his way? He's not. He won't be. I will say another reason why it's like a 3 is Jacob's character shift. It was such a wild swing to him being an asshole in this book. It kind of came out of nowhere, like not really nowhere, but it wasn't expected, maybe is the better way to put it, because coming straight off of New Moon and how he was acting in that one to how he acts in Eclipse, I was like, what do you mean? Girl, what are we doing? He's become a walking red flag in Eclipse, essentially. The fun rating is higher than the regular rating, but I can see why a lot of people wouldn't rate Eclipse. They wouldn't put it very high on their ranking of the Twilight books. I understand now. At the end of this series, I think I might also do a tier ranking, and we'll see how I feel after I finish all of the books. But that was Eclipse, and the next book on the reading order was the Eclipse novella, which was The Short Second Life of Bree Tanner, because we do get this one random vampire in the newborn army, and we get her name. Her name is Bree. She surrenders to Carlisle at the end of the fight, but the Volturi are like, nah, girl, sorry. That was not your decision to make, and she's got to go. But we get a little more background on her in the novella, and we'll just move ahead to that one. This was the most recent book I finished, The Short Second Life of Bree Tanner, and I was a little more excited to read this before I actually read it. At the end of Eclipse, that's when we get like the big vampire showdown, the big throwdown, where we have the Cullens and the werewolves that team up going up against the newborn army that Victoria has created. And at the end of the battle, one of the newborn vampires, they end up surrendering because Carlisle's like, yo, you want to surrender? Because if you don't, I'm gonna have to kill you. And she's like, yeah, dude, I'm chill, no worries. And that vampire, her name is Bree. I mean, she ends up dying by the hands of the Volturi anyway, but we couldn't help that. Her fate was already decided by Stephanie Meyer. So with The Short Second Life of Bree Tanner, we end up starting out, she's already been turned into a vampire. At the point that we meet her in the beginning of the novella, she's 3 months old, and she was turned, she thinks when she was about 16 human years. And there are no chapters. It's just, I don't read many novellas, so I was expecting chapters. Maybe that's not typically a thing. This one does not have them. I need to show you Beyonce. Hold on. What are you doing? Baby. Are you super cute? You're not gonna look? All right, well, we're gonna go back to the video now. Talking about sparkly vampires. She's not interested. Back to Bree. Bree Tanner is a newborn vampire. We find out that Bree is one of the few vampires in like the group of 20 that have been created that has a little more of a brain than the other newborn vampires. They all vary in like the age range, but the oldest newborn is still just over a year old. His name is Diego, right? Yes. So they're all still newborns, and they've been fed all of these lies by Riley. And he's like, oh, you can't go out in the sun. Like, he's really trying to play into the typical vampire lore and tropes of you can't go out in the sun or you'll burn up. That's really the only one I can think about. He really plays into the legends of vampires that humans know. And the big one that he just keeps reiterating and trying to drill into their brain is you cannot go outside during the daytime because you'll just explode into a million pieces. You'll burst into fire and you're done for. She thinks that, the rest of the newborns think that, and it's really just a way for Victoria and for Riley, but mostly Victoria, to keep this newborn army under control and to make them come back to the house that they go and like find all of these well, they're probably not abandoned houses, they probably murder the owners, but they take over houses where there's a basement, and that forces all of these newborns to have to come back to this house every single day. It's a way for them to keep control, because if all of them knew that all they did was sparkle in the daytime, they're not going to come back. We have Bree, and she's been out hunting with a couple of other vampires in the newborn army. That's another thing, is they don't let all of the newborns go out to hunt every night all at the same time, which honestly is probably the smartest thing to do. They just let them go out in smaller groups. But I mean, they already have Seattle under this panic attack of going, we have a lot of like serial killer murders happening. That's what we think. And oh my God, all these people are disappearing. And the regular newborns, the ones who just all they're thinking about is, I need to drink blood and do whatever I want. They're kind of just leaving bodies and leaving just debris and a mess everywhere they go. But you have Bree and Diego, probably a handful of other ones, but they clean up after themselves, and they end up cleaning up after a couple of kind of the dumb vampires too. So there's less of a trail, or at least it looks like it hasn't been like the serial killer that Seattle thinks is happening. Bree is out with a couple of the dumb vampires, and Diego, I don't know how he finds them, but it's getting closer to dawn, and they're both like, crap, we have to like get underground, we have to go inside. And they have this little cave at the house where they used to be that Diego has. So they end up staying there most of the day, or at least most of the morning. But Diego is like, I guess you could call him really good friends with Riley. Diego has his own theories that he thinks they're not really getting all the information from Riley and from her. None of the newborns ever get Victoria's name, and it's to keep Victoria safe, because I think Riley does end up telling them, like the newborn army, oh, what he tells them, we have enemies and they can read your mind. If any of them hear her name in your head, there's no reason for them to keep you alive. It's really for your benefit, which I guess I could see that point, but it's for Victoria's safety, let's be honest. Diego has theories and thinks they're not getting the full story. And then Bree is also thinking, she's a little suspicious of not only the whole situation, but of Diego. But she starts to get a little crush on Diego. Diego likes her back, and they start becoming like really close friends over the course of like a matter of days. But vampires, plus it's a novella, it has to, we got to work fast here. We have Bree and Diego one night after everybody's gotten back to the house. They follow Riley because they're like, okay, well, clearly, oh, did I mention that while the two of them were hiding out during the day, like they discovered they could sparkle? Like, it was kind of an accident. Diego had a theory that the light wouldn't actually burn them up, but they didn't know for sure, and they kind of accidentally found out. And Diego's like, we should tell Riley, but don't worry, I'll do it. I'll tell Riley, since me and him are like best buds. And that's the reason that they are following Riley. And they're going, okay, clearly he's going to see her, our creator. And they track him through the woods to this goofy looking little cabin. It reminds me, like, the way it was described, I was like, is this the Witch in the Woods with Hansel and Gretel? Like, it's like made of candy or something. It sounds really goofy. They watch him go in and they just kind of sit in the trees and watch. And they're vampires, they have great hearing, and they're waiting kind of for an opening for Riley to come out so that Diego can intercept him and say, "Hey, I need to talk to you." But while the two of them, Riley and Victoria, are in the house, here comes another group of vampires. It's the Volturi. These two don't know that. They're just like, who are these people? The Volturi get in there and they're like, "Girl, what are you doing?" And so Victoria has to explain her plan. She knows who they are. Riley doesn't really know, I don't think. Victoria is well aware of who the Volturi are. And so she has to explain the plan. The Volturis are basically sitting there going, "Hey, we'll give you the green light if you can destroy the Cullens but make sure that we get Edward and Alice because they have really cool tricks that they can do and we want them." I can't remember if they want to keep Bella alive. Probably though. Why not? They're giving Victoria the go ahead and they're not going to do anything. They're not going to try to stop her as long as they can get Edward and Alice, maybe Bella, and, just kind of clean up her mess. As long as, go do your thing, but clean up after yourself. If things go sideways, they're already in town, so they're basically going to come through, Thanos snap everything back in order, and obviously they're going to pretend that they had no knowledge and they were not a part of this. The Volturi leave, and Bree and Diego are looking at each other like that was weird. Riley's leaving the house and Diego's like, "All right, this is my chance." Like he's going to have my scent and he's going to smell that I was here. You go back to the house. I'm going to confront him. I'll tell him that we're sparkly. We just won't talk about anything that we heard though. Bree says, "Okay." She heads back. And that's the last we hear of Diego. It's kind of implied that Victoria and Riley had to get rid of him once he found out that all they did in the sun was sparkle, but it's never technically confirmed. Going back to the house, Bree makes it back. All the vampires are just kind of chilling. Riley comes in and he feeds them all these lies about like, "Oh, we have enemies. They're called the Cullens. It's like a pretty big coven, not as big as ours. But Seattle is their hunting ground and they want it back." And that's all of the reasoning they have for why they are now an army. And that's why they were created and why they have to go and fight the Cullens. And then he also feeds them a lie of like 4 times a year, the sun does not hurt vampires. So only 4 times a year can they go outside and they won't burn to a crisp. And everyone's like, "Oh man, that's wild." They're very easily convinced, which is great for them. Great for Riley, great for Victoria, great for the plot. Riley trains up these vampires for a few days because that was part of the deal they made with the Volturi. I think Victoria got them 5 days before they were going to go and attack the Cullens. Riley's over here training this army of newborn vampires. We go through these little training sequences and it's finally time to go fight the Cullens. We find out all of this in Eclipse. They know what's going on at this point. They know which way they're coming, but the newborns are going to launch their attack. But much like Eclipse, we don't actually see a lot of the battle, which is part of the reason why I was disappointed with Eclipse. Because I remember in the movie, it was like this whole big like showdown. I understand it would have added like probably a big chunk of pages to the book itself. So in a way, I get it. But at the same time, it's disappointing to not see it because Bree is hanging back. She still thinks at the time, even right at the battle, that Diego is alive. And it's during the time of like right before they attack that she goes, "He's not here. He probably got killed by, our creator and by Riley." And she's pissed. So now she wants to go and kill Riley, but she's kind of already in the thick of it. So the battle's over by the time she steps onto the field. This battle was over in like, it seems less than 5 minutes. Little anticlimactic in both Eclipse and in this novella. Bree makes it onto the field. The battle's basically done. She doesn't ever see the werewolves because she gets captured by Carlisle and she does surrender to him. And Jasper comes over. Jasper's ready to just end her right then and there. And Carlisle's like, yo, man, pump your brakes. She's going to surrender. And Jasper doesn't like it, but he goes with it. And it's just essentially the end of that battle in Eclipse. Edward and Bella show back up. Jacob gets hurt, but Jasper makes Jasper makes Bree cover her eye, like shut her eyes and cover her ears so that she doesn't see anything else. So she doesn't know that all of the howling and stuff is werewolves. She has no idea. And he wants to keep it that way, like just in case. But we get the final showdown with the Volturi. They show up and they're like, nah, dude, you can't give her like freedom just because she surrendered. That's not how we do things. We get Bree because she already knew that one of the Cullens could read minds. She's trying to think all of this information just in hoping that the mind reader of the Cullens, she doesn't know which one it is. She's hoping that whoever the Cullens mind reader is listening to her thoughts and getting all of this information. So I guess it's a little bit implied at the end when Edward kind of, in a roundabout way, confirms that the Volturi knew what Victoria was doing and basically gave her the thumbs up. We see a little bit of connection because Bree knew it and she's thinking so hard and so loudly and hoping that the mind reader hears her. So I guess that's how Edward was like, I'm going to try to figure this out. I'm going to go roundabout and ask some questions and get a little bit of confirmation about it. But then we end with, the Volturi say, Bree can't live. That wasn't your option to give her. She's got to go. And she is destroyed by the Volturi. We knew it was coming. Still a little bit sad. And that was the novella. It was nice. It was fun. It's a novella. It's not going to be a long book, and I get that. But part of me was hoping that we would get just maybe the last day of her being a human and then her being turned. And you could do like kind of flashbacks or, just little moments of her as a very fresh newborn move into what the actual book was, just the full days, like the final days before this big battle. I was also hoping for more of a battle scene, which we didn't get again. So again, a little bit disappointing there. The ending was the ending. We already knew what happened. It was already shown in Eclipse, but it still felt a little flat even in the novella. Like, it felt a little more fleshed out and a little more done in Eclipse than it did in the novella, which is a little weird. Like, the back of the book says, discover the riveting story of Bree Tanner. I don't know if I would have called this riveting. Fun, but not riveting. I'm not sure it was necessarily needed by giving that new vampire, that newborn, at the end of the fight in Eclipse. We find her name out, fun little thing to be like, oh, what if she had a novella? What if we find out a little more about her? So that was fine. It didn't add as much as I was hoping. We do get a little bit more information. We do see for a fact that the Volturi knew what Victoria was doing, that they were in on it. I don't really think it added that much to the story overall. It's kind of, you can tell from when the Volturi and the Cullens, when they meet in Italy, or at least when like Edward and Bella meet them, something's up. They're not going to play fair. So it wasn't like this big light bulb moment of like, oh my God, I can't believe they knew. Like, come on. It's pretty obvious they're willing to play dirty and do whatever it takes to get their way. And everyone treats them as like the vampire police or like vampire royalty, but they're not technically like officially that. They just have the most power and they can fuck you up really quick. That's why everyone like defers to them and doesn't want to mess with them. So it was fine. I think for a fun factor, I would give it a 3 because, it was fine overall. It was nice to see a little bit behind the scenes, I guess, of the newborn army. That's always a good time. But for my actual rating, probably also a 3. I think it was just pretty average overall on either the fun side and the regular rating side. That's the novella. I did read this right after Eclipse, so everything was fresh in my mind. That big fight that we really didn't see was still fresh in my mind, which is why I was hoping for a little bit more from the novella, but that's okay. And now we move on. After the novella, I've already started Breaking Dawn. I haven't gotten far. I'm like 180 something pages in. Things have happened in the book so far. We start off pretty quick, I will say that. Edward's not messing around with this wedding thing. Like, he's ready to tie the knot. So things have already started happening. So I will continue with Breaking Dawn, and I will come back when I am done with it, and I'll let you know what my thoughts are. I have officially finished the original trilogy. I finished Breaking Dawn a couple of days ago, and while this felt like the book that would not end, this one was probably one of my favorites. Something that I didn't expect, but I did find kind of neat, was that we do get in the middle, we get Jacob's perspective again. Book ended by Bella at the beginning and the end of the book. There was so much tension in this book as well. I was a little disappointed that we didn't get this big final throwdown battle between the Volturi and all of their little witnesses that they brought and the Cullens and their friends and family. At the same time, I also kind of expected it wasn't going to be this big final battle scene. I couldn't remember a whole lot from the end of the last Breaking Dawn movie, but since we didn't get a big battle from the newborn army, we were just essentially told about it while we did see a little mini battle between Edward and Victoria. I wasn't expecting that we were going to get one. I was hoping for one, but I also expected we weren't going to get this big final showdown. And honestly, I really enjoyed the way that it ended. Finishing this final book in the original, did I call this a trilogy earlier? I hope not, because it's definitely not a trilogy. Finishing the final book in the original series, just, it felt like everything kind of came to a nice conclusion. It closed things out really well. I'm sorry, I still think Renesmee is the dumbest name she could have given this kid. Sorry. I don't know what happened. I don't think I searched anything Twilight related on my Reddit account, but all of a sudden, the Twilight subreddit and so many things related to Twilight have been popping up on my Reddit feed. And one of the things yesterday that popped up was, okay, are we still making fun of Renesmee's name? Like, what are we calling her now? And there was just lists of things that people were calling her, like Robitussin and Rename Me and stuff like that. And it was just, I was cracking up reading through this list. I was like, okay, good. It seems like the general consensus is that people, while they love the series and they love the books, the name Renesmee just did not hit for so many people. It's a dumb name, okay? And honestly, I don't know if I've made this comment or if I just made it in my head, but when Bella finds out that Jacob and he's got everybody else calling the baby Nessie instead of Renesmee, girl, calm down. Nessie is a name. People can be named Nessie. Relax, okay? Getting off of the whole baby name track though, I really enjoyed Breaking Dawn, and I do think this might be probably my favorite book of the entire series. I think New Moon might still be New Moon and Eclipse. I'm gonna have to go back and kind of maybe flip through each of them and just see how I feel, see if anything kind of comes back to me of like, oh, this is how I felt about this book. I did hate Jacob's complete 180 on his character in Eclipse. I don't know, why'd you do that? That was so dirty. You did Jacob so dirty with that character arc. But I also didn't like New Moon because we're stuck in Bella's head for like 85, 90% of the book. And that was just not a good time. So New Moon and Eclipse, they were kind of a struggle to get through, but this, good God, this book seemed like it would not end. Every time I would get to the end of a chapter Or like I would get to page 400, 500, and I'd be like, okay, cool. I'm at page 400. And then I go, oh God, there's still so much book to go. It never ended. I don't think it needed to be this long of a book. And now I know why they had to break up Breaking Dawn into 2 movies. Overall, though, I think Breaking Dawn was an excellent book. I really enjoyed it, even though it seemed like it wouldn't end. That one is probably, it may be my favorite. I'm going to go ahead and put that out there. Breaking Dawn might be my favorite Twilight book that I've read so far. And also, fun thing that I found when I was reading it, I picked the book up one day. The back cover just kind of fell open, and I was like, what is this? I wasn't expecting a CD. Apparently, this is like, it's the concert series CD. And in the back of the book, they have all of the songs, I'm guessing, from the concert series. And I did not know that was back there until I was well over halfway through Breaking Dawn. So that was kind of fun. I don't know if I'll ever listen to it, but that was a fun little surprise. It's been a couple days now, but I have started Midnight Sun. I am struggling to get into Midnight Sun a little bit. And I feel like part of that is because with Midnight Sun, we're getting Edward's perspective from basically the original Twilight book. So we're going all the way back to the very beginning. There's one part of my brain that's like, we've already done that. We've been there, done that. It would be kind of cool to see Edward's take on it, but do we really need that right now? And I think that is coming from the fact that I've been in the Twilight universe for such a long time, or at least it feels that way. And it's a lot. I think it's starting to finally weigh on me. I've just been in the Twilight world for so long at this point. I'm going, is there an end? Do I ever get to leave? Because I also found out just a couple of days ago, totally by accident, through Reddit, that there's going to be another book in the Twilight universe. I'm not sure when it's coming out. I didn't look too far into that Reddit thread. I think they were all just kind of thinking, oh, here's what it might be about. Here, it would be cool if it was about XYZ. So I'm not sure if there's been an official date announced yet, but I copied that and threw it in a Discord thread with my friends. And I was like, I'm sorry, there's going to be another one? And not all of them were shocked, but I was definitely shocked. I don't understand. I thought the series was done. Actually, well, I thought the series was done with Breaking Dawn. And then when I was doing my research for this video, I found out Breaking Sun. Midnight Sun was a thing, and Life and Death, the gender bent Twilight, which also, Life and Death is another retelling of the original Twilight book. So I'm basically reading original Twilight back to back 2 more times after I've already read the first one. So I might read something in between Midnight Sun and Life and Death, because while I have very much enjoyed getting into the Twilight universe, I didn't think I would enjoy it as much as I have. And I do have a newfound, I don't know what to call it. Newfound love seems a little too intense. That's bordering on Jacob and Eclipse level intense, and we're not there yet. I do enjoy the series, and which is a nice surprise, because you don't want to go into a series, start reading it, and go, good God, I hate this. This is not a good time. Because it's not going to be fun for you. And then you have to slog your way through it or DNF. Both of which, not really the best time. I'm loving the series. I'm not sure where my thought was going like a second ago, but I do feel like I'm running out of steam just a little bit, because it's been book after book after book. I feel like I need to take a break, which is probably why I haven't gotten very far in Midnight Sun. I think I started this like 2 or 3 days ago, and typically it's taken me about 3 days to finish each book. I think Breaking Dawn took 4 or 5, and Midnight Sun is also a very big book. And I was going, okay, it'll probably take me like 4 to 5 days, maybe the similar time frame for Breaking Dawn. I'm struggling to just pick this up and read it, and I think it's just because I'm getting a little tired. I need a little bit of a break. I need to step back, but I am going to finish it. I'm gonna finish Midnight Sun because there are some interesting things so far. We know how Edward reacted from Bella's point of view. I just got past the part where hung out in Alaska for a few days after she showed up in his biology class. It is interesting to see not just his perspective either, but the family's, because we get that Rosalie is not the biggest fan of Bella from the start, and she definitely did not like Bella's take on, I want to be with Edward forever. I'm willing to give up my human life, because Rosalie did not have that option. And if she could go back and change things, she would just want to stay a human rather than become a vampire. But we see how much disdain it seems that Rosalie has towards Bella. And then, obviously Emmett's going to side with Rosalie, even though he really doesn't want to. And then Jasper is also on the side of like, oh, you say you're tempted by the scent of her blood. Okay, well, let's just kill her and get it over with. We'll figure it out. We'll hide the damage that's been done, and you can't tempt yourself like this. But then you've got Carlisle, who believes that Edward can hold off and not kill Bella just because he's so tempted by the scent of her blood. Esme is siding with Carlisle, and Alice is actually siding with Esme and Carlisle as well, which Jasper was expecting her to side with him. And then we get Alice seen having the vision that her and Bella are going to become really good friends, and that Bella's going to become a vampire at some point. And that freaks Edward out, and he just like took off running through the house, and he's in the woods. I don't know. He has a little temper tantrum, but I didn't get very far is the point. That's where I'm at right now. I'm struggling to read it just because I'm getting a little tired, but I'm just going to take my time with it. I'm not going to force myself to read this. But it is interesting to see things from his perspective, and I like that we're getting the family's perspective as well, because obviously we're not getting all of that in Twilight. We're only getting it from Bella's point of view. That's where I'm at, and I will come back when I'm done with Midnight Sun.
I have been very not productive today, and that's okay. But something that I was productive, I finally finished Midnight Sun last week. Was that Friday? I think it was Friday. No, it wasn't. It was Wednesday. I finished this on a Wednesday, September 17th, and I had started it previously, and when I started sprints that Wednesday, I was on page like 219, I believe, and I put as my title, Sprints Don't End Until I Finish Midnight Sun. And sprints did not end until I finished Midnight Sun, and it took me about 11 and a half hours. This was very much the book that would never end. I thought Breaking Dawn was the book that wouldn't end. Turns out it was Midnight Sun. I really enjoyed Midnight Sun. It is the retelling of Twilight, but from Edward's point of view. I enjoyed it, but I am very glad I waited until now to read it, because I did see a comment on a Reddit thread back before I even started reading these books. The person asked, they were like, okay, well, what are all the books in the Twilight series? And obviously they listed the 4 main books, but this person wrote, there's also Midnight Sun, the second life of Bree Tanner, and then Life and Death. And they put Midnight Sun right after Twilight, and the comment under them was like, I would say don't do that, because you're basically just reading the same story twice. And while that is true, there are, to me, a good amount of differences between the Twilight book and Midnight Sun, where it's still a pretty different retelling. I think part of the reason that I enjoyed Midnight Sun is because we do get to see all of the Cullens and their reactions alongside Edward, and we don't get that in Twilight, because obviously from Twilight we're only getting Bella's point of view, and we're in her head essentially the entire book. She does interact with Edward, she does interact with Jacob, with her dad Charlie. We only get those direct interactions between her and whoever she's talking to. A majority of that is going to be Edward, and we get a few things here and there between her and the Cullens, especially after she comes in contact with James and Victoria and Laurent. Overall, it's a very narrow field of Bella's point of view and who she interacts with. Whereas in Midnight Sun, a majority of the book, it's in Edward's head, it's his point of view. We get the family's reaction when Edward and Bella really start to interact a lot more and become more infatuated with each other. We get a lot of responses from the Cullen family, how they perceive Edward's blooming relationship with Bella. And I really enjoyed that part because I don't feel like we see enough of the Cullens as a whole, enough of the family members. We get a lot of Alice because Alice and Bella end up becoming best friends, but we don't get a lot otherwise from the rest of the Cullen family. It was really interesting to me to see how Edward thinks about Bella from his perspective, because let me tell you, I have a lot of opinions on Bella and how she is in her head all the time. She's absolutely the not like other girls blueprint, but she's also very woe is me. And Edward is the same way. They are very much made for each other in every sense of the word. And I'm totally fine with that. I don't really have like a team Edward or team Jacob, any of that. I'm just here for the ride. I'm here for a fun story. But they are absolutely made for each other. Just based on how Edward is in the book and his point of view, it's basically just Bella as a vampire. They're basically the same person the way the books are written. I really enjoyed all of the lead up to how the whole baseball scene, and then once that other coven comes into play, how the Cullens are like, this is a big problem, we need to fix this. And we get to see all of the behind the scenes stuff, essentially, of what they're doing in order to protect Bella, in order to protect Charlie, and how they're trying to work together, except for Rosalie. I feel really bad because Rosalie is just painted as this huge bitch who just does not give a shit. And I feel like Stephenie Meyer just, I don't know, it's like she created the character Rosalie just to hate on her, honestly. That's a whole other train of thought though. But I really enjoyed after we get the whole interaction with James and his coven and they start hunting Bella, and the lead up to Bella going down to Phoenix and they're trying to like trick James. We get Edward, we get Emmett, we get Carlisle, and they're chasing James. They're trying to run him off, but then they get outsmarted and Bella's already down in Phoenix. So we get to see all of the behind the scenes and Alice going through all of these potential different futures while they're trying to get to Bella to save Bella and stop James from killing her. I really enjoyed that. Much like Twilight, the first half of the book, because we're just basically in Edward's head and it's a replay of them meeting for the first time and him being like, oh my God, she has the best scent ever, but I can't be with her. I'm a vampire. I have no soul. And then once they start hanging out more, there's a little more action, but it really doesn't pick up until the baseball game, which is fine. I already knew that was coming, obviously. Overall, though, I really enjoyed this. I'm not sure if I like Midnight Sun over Twilight, just in the retelling sense. I'm a person who enjoys behind the scenes stuff. I'm a person who enjoys details when characters are like, oh my God, we have to come up with a plan in order to save so-and-so. And instead of just cutting to whatever the plan is and the plan working, I want to see the lead up to it. I want to see them planning it out and trying to think ahead of, is this going to work? That's not going to work. Okay, what else could we do? How are we going to make this happen? Instead of just glossing over it. And I get it in Twilight because we're from Bella's point of view. So she's obviously not going to know what the plan is. She's just kind of going along and trying to sacrifice herself to James so that she can save her mom and save the other vampires that she's met, the Cullens, and be this sacrificial lamb. It's fun to see all of the thought and the potential futures that could have happened from this book, from Midnight Sun. Overall, this book was 658 pages, and a majority of it was brooding. Over half of the book is just brooding. I don't necessarily think it needed to be almost 700 pages. especially when considering Twilight was nowhere close to that, at least the editions that I have. I know what the story is, so in my brain, I'm going, okay, well, I know it's not going to end yet because we haven't come to this part or we haven't hit this section yet. But almost 700 pages for a Twilight retelling was a choice. It was a lot, but I still had fun. And the last and final book in the Twilight universe for now, because I found out that I think Stephenie Meyer is writing another one, is Life and Death. And this is the gender bend version of Twilight where Edward is Edith, I believe, and then Bella is Beaufort. Okay. This is the only book I have left. Luckily, it's not almost 700 pages. I haven't gotten far. I think I'm on page 3. I needed a small break after Midnight Sun before just going straight into Life and Death. And I think that's a big part of why I feel so exhausted with this series in a good way. I'm not saying I'm tired of the series, but reading all of these books back to back, especially when Breaking Dawn is such a large book and then Midnight Sun is also a very large book and Midnight Sun is just a large book of a book I've already read. It's getting a little tiring. I'm tired. I'm really exhausted. So I took a couple days off of Twilight and I'm going to jump back into the Twilight universe. We're going to finish Life and Death and then that'll be it. We'll be done with Twilight. Even though I still have this one last book to go, I have technically finished the Twilight series because the 4 books are the original series. And I do wish during this whole full series reading vlog that I had maybe vlogged more of my thoughts, especially while I was reading the books, and not just waited until the end or a couple days after I finished them, because I do have a lot to say. I tabbed the hell out of Twilight and then continued tabbing throughout the series, but when I hit Eclipse, I kind of eased back a little bit. But there are so many thoughts that I had, so many things I wanted to say, and I don't feel like I said even 1/8 of all of the thoughts that I had. But I really have enjoyed it. I think it just ended up being me reading this just to have fun, because the movies are a good time. Right after I started Twilight, I really was just having a good time with the books and with the story. Even knowing what happens in the movies, I still had such a good time reading the books, because while the story overall is the same, there are still a little bit of differences from book to movie. And I think it just kind of started going towards, oh, I have all these thoughts, I'm going to tab this and I really want to mention that, to just reading to enjoy it. And I think that should probably come first, because I don't want to force myself to read a series. I don't want to force myself to read a book and sit there and go, oh my God, I hate this. I'm not having a good time, and want to either DNF for now or just DNF forever. I don't want to just force myself to read a series. I still want to enjoy the books that I'm reading. And while I do wish I said more and shared more of my thoughts and maybe went a little more in depth with each of the books, especially while I was reading them, because I read most of these, it took me on average 3 to 4 days per book. Breaking Dawn and Midnight Sun, totally different, took way longer. But I do wish I had shared more of my thoughts as I was reading them, which, I mean, I could go back now, but I've been in the Twilight universe for a good couple of weeks now. I think if I were to do a little bit more vlogging while reading, this would be during a reread, which could be fun as well, because then I can go back, see what I tapped the first time and see if my thoughts still align, or see if I catch something on the reread. I honestly might do next year. It's a really fun fall book. It gives a really good cozy fall vibe. So I could see myself maybe doing a reread of the series next year. I probably will not read the novella or Life and Death or Midnight Sun. I'd probably just stick to the main series because that's enough. So that is the one regret that I do have, is that I didn't go as in depth as I thought I might with this series, which is something to learn from and something that maybe I could take moving forward for more full series reading vlogs, and something I really would like to do. That's the only regret I have. I have absolutely no regrets overall with this series, though. It is a good time. I think I could count myself as a Twilight fan now.
I have officially finished the last Twilight book. Life and Death was the last book that I read for the series, and I'm officially done. I have thoughts. This was not my favorite. I'll tell you that right now. And I don't know if that was because I read Midnight Sun and Life and Death back to back. My opinion directly after finishing this was we did not need this book. And I know this one came out prior to Midnight Sun. This is the 10th anniversary, and Midnight Sun came out in 2020, I believe. The idea of a gender bend Twilight was really interesting because obviously we swapped Bella and Edward. I didn't like the name Beaufort. We'll get into the name thing in a second, but I wasn't aware that she was going to swap everybody. Literally every character in that book, minus Charlie and Renee, were gender swapped, which was really interesting. I thought that made it fun. It makes it different, obviously. She did change a couple of things in the story as well. And the story itself definitely changes at the very end. We do get the same overall storyline. So the small coven that interrupts the baseball game, the wind blows, they smell Bo. That rhymed on accident. They start tracking Bo, and we go through that whole adventure of having to keep him safe. But then they still go to Phoenix. Bo gets tricked, almost dies. And the vampire that plays James, who is named Joss in this book, still bites Bo on the hand, just like in the original book. We're at the point where, Alice is there. It's not Alice, it's Archie. It was really confusing, I will also say, trying to keep track of which character is who, because she's changed everyone, and you've been with that main set of characters for so many books. It was hard to keep my mind wrapped around the fact that it's not Alice, it's Archie. So they finally catch up to Bo. They beat Joss, they've burned Joss, they don't have to deal with them anymore. And they're telling Edith, hey, Bo has been bit. Archie/Alice is seeing the different futures. And they tell Edith, the only two futures I see are Bo dying, like he's gone forever, or Bo being turned into a vampire. Kind of similar to the end of the original Twilight book, but Edith ends up turning Bo. So we get Bo as a vampire right at the end of this book. And because of that, they have to kind of formulate this plan to go, okay, well, we're just going to have to come up with this backstory of like, Bo crashed a car, so they find someone, they end up being grave robbers, and they find a body who had been buried recently. They grab that body, they wreck Bo's car, so they can stage a death, and they have the families in the whole town of Forks go through the whole funeral for Bo, because Edith and Bo are watching in a tree far enough away, because Bo is still a young vampire, so can't really be trusted. Much like Bella when he was first turned, for some reason is also able to resist a lot of things, unlike a new vampire, but because they're trying to be cautious, Edith and Bo are hanging out in a tree. The rest of the Cullens do go to the funeral to pay their respects. We do see just kind of how life would have been like had Bella been turned so early on. So that was really interesting. It was a different take. I do appreciate that we got a little bit of closure, I guess, in this book, and she didn't end up kind of having it open-ended where they're together, but he hasn't turned, and she's not going to turn him right away, and we're not sure when that's going to happen. I was assuming that's how it was going to be, and we were just going to be left to assume events will play out like in the rest of the series, and she'll probably turn him later on in like a year or so. The other thing that I thought was interesting that she changed in this book was how the werewolves and the Cullens interact, because they do still have some of the tribe members, some of the kids transform as shifters because there are more vampires around, but the way they still keep that animosity between the tribe and the Cullens, more so on the tribe side. We do get a part at the end. The tribe is going, you guys broke the treaty. Bo is gone. They think the Cullens killed Bo. So Edith and Bo show up to meet with some of the tribe to be like, hey, it's me. Yes, I'm a vampire, but it's still me. It's interesting because to me, and this may be because I read all of them back to back to back, Bo doesn't seem as whiny and as not like other girls as Bella did. And then Edith doesn't seem as mopey is not the word I really want to use to describe Edward, but Edward always seemed really possessive and really territorial. And you still get that with Edith. Again, I think the territorial thing and possessive thing is just a vampire trait, like a general lore trait. You still get that, but she doesn't seem as intense about it as Edward always seemed to me in the books. And while Bo is also very focused on Edith, it doesn't feel as obsessive. Their feelings towards each other, Edith and Bo, in this book, overall doesn't feel as possessive, as intense. I guess it really just, it doesn't have that intensity as it did in the first book. I think one of my biggest complaints, and this was something that I was talking about while I was doing some reading sprints on Twitch, were the names that we gave to these characters. We use Bo a lot. Bo is the name that they go by, kind of how Isabella, it goes by Bella, but Bo is short for Beaufort. Why? I know why. In the book, it says that he's named for his grandpa that passed about a couple months prior to him being born. And while the sentiment is very sweet, Beaufort was a choice. And then we have Edith for Edward, but it's Edith with a Y, not Edith with an I. Then we have Jessamine, I think is how it's pronounced, for Jasper. Archie instead of Alice. For whatever reason, I don't like Archie. It just reminds me of the Archie comics, and I was like, you really could, there was no other name that we could have come up with, like Alex maybe. Then there's Eleanor for Emmett. This one absolutely just, I can't get over this one, and I'm sorry. This is one that she should be shunned for. Instead of Rosalie, Royal. Why? Royal? Really? That one, I can't get behind that one at all. That's a hill I'm gonna die on. You cannot convince me that was an okay name trade. Absolutely not. And then instead of Carlisle, I get it, like he was, I think he's from like the 1600s, so it's going to be an older name for sure. Because I don't know about you, but I don't run into a whole lot of Carlisles in my time. I don't know if it's Carmine or Carmen. It's Carmine. I've never seen a Carmen spelled like that. You can spell a name many different ways, I'm well aware. But I don't know how to pronounce it. And I'm not listening to the audiobook, so I don't know how to say it. The first time I read it, I was like, Carmine. Carmen? I don't know. That one, I'm not really sure about. And then poor Esme. I'm sorry. Esme, that's kind of a pretty name. So why did you rename them Ernest? No offense to any Ernests out there, okay? No offense. But we go from Esme to Ernest. That's a downgrade. I'm sorry. And then imagine the whole kid situation, because that was something I was like, I wonder how they would continue the series, because he can't have a kid, but then if they end up having a kid, she was combining Renee and Esme's name. So it would be what? Oh, let's say Carmen. Carmen's name, or Carmine, and Renee. How would you combine those two? Carname? Sounds like cardamom. Like Renee I don't even know. You can't combine those two names. If you find a better way to combine those two names, let me know in the comments. Overall, I think Life and Death was my least favorite out of all of the books, and I'm really not convinced that we needed this one. It was a fun idea, but I don't think the execution was great. Maybe that's where I'm going with it, because I've had a couple days to kind of sit and think about it. I still hate the names. I still think we did a terrible job with the names. I don't think we needed this. Or if she was really intent on doing a gender bend version, which is a great idea, I don't think this was it. And I also don't recommend reading essentially the same book back to back. Like, don't read this after Midnight Sun. Don't read Twilight, this one, or Midnight Sun back to back. You're gonna get exhausted. that's another thing. Don't hate me for this, but the typical rating for this, I think I'll give it a 3. Having a gender bend version of Twilight, that was really interesting. And I do appreciate that it wasn't the exact same story. It wasn't just a copy and paste. We did change a couple of things throughout the story. Obviously, the ending was changed, so I do appreciate that. I don't think we needed yet another version of Twilight. For the fun version, I'm going to be honest, I really did not have a lot of fun with this one. Part of it is I do think I was exhausted after getting through the entire series, but this is technically my 3rd time reading the same book. I wasn't feeling it. I don't feel like the relationship between Edith and Beau is as intense as it was between Edward and Bella. I'm gonna give the fun a 2. I think I was kind of wavering on giving it a 3, but thinking back, I didn't really have a good time reading this. I didn't really have a lot of fun. I'm gonna give it a 2 for fun. Sorry. We have come a very long way. We have gone through so many stages of Bella, and Bella and Edward have been a journey just by themselves, but overall, we all went through this journey together. Because be honest, you can't look at these and tell me this is not a journey. Those are really heavy. I think my one complaint with the entire series as a whole is that Stephenie Meyer does not want to write a battle sequence at all, and she will shy away from it every single time. I know we do get a couple of scenes between Edward and Victoria, and then it's kind of like a showdown between the Volturi and the Cullens, but overall, we don't get any big battle scenes, and I was ready for those. Every time you would feel the tension leading up to it, and I did appreciate that part. She did a very good job of creating tension, but then it would just disappear at the drop of a hat. Somehow we would magically resolve everything and all the tension would go away. Well, not all the tension. There would still be tension, but the potential for a fight would just be gone, which was really disappointing. I wanted to see this big throwdown battle between a bunch of vampires. We get a little bit of that between, again, Edward and Victoria, but that was just kind of, it felt like I'll throw this in and that'll keep everybody happy. Then I don't have to write any big battle sequences. So that was a little disappointing to me. On the flip side, I had a really good time. I really enjoyed the original series the most out of all of them, but I enjoyed getting Bree Tanner's story. It was kind of a nice little addition to it to get a little more background, especially behind the scenes stuff. And again, Midnight Sun, I really enjoyed being able to see the rest of the Cullens' reactions, not only to Edward and Bella, like their relationship, but between each Cullen and Edward. And that was really fun for me. It did feel very behind the scenes. It helped fill in a lot of gaps, I guess, that were in my head when I was reading Twilight originally. I still don't really think that we needed life and death. It kind of feels like you're milking the Twilight series and the Twilight story at that point. Again, I know that one came before Midnight Sun, but we've had a lot of Edward and Bella. We know what happens. We get it. How about we try something else? I would love a story with Carlisle. That one would be fun. People love Alice. I love Alice. Would love a story with Alice. Let's let Edward and Bella just go and do their own thing. Let's leave them alone. We've had their story 3 times at this point, so let's move on. This was a journey, without a doubt, and I'm going to give my final ratings for the series as a whole. I can't hold those books up for a long time. They're very heavy. The overall typical, regular, everyday rating that I'm going to give the Twilight series, every single book that I read, I'm going to give a 4, which, if I'm being completely honest, I thought was going to be rated a lot lower. Probably not like a 2, but like I was thinking more of a 3. I went into this with an open mind, ready to have fun, and figured, you know, it is an older series. It's the 20th anniversary. Wasn't really my type of book, but it'll still probably be fun. So I was figuring a middle of the road rating, but I think a 4 is where I'm good at. I think a 4 is very fitting. It does tell a good story. You do get very involved with the characters, you get involved with the story, and I really enjoyed it. Honestly, I could see myself rereading at least the original series, not like every single year, but every so often. I enjoyed myself. I had a lot more fun than I thought I would. And now for the fun rating for the entire Twilight series. This one was pretty easy. It's a 5. A 5 for fun. It's sparkly vampires. It's shape-shifting werewolves. You've got adventure. You've got vampires trying to kill other vampires, trying to kill this human who's involved with a vampire. I had a really good time. Some of the books were not my favorite, and even in the original series, I really didn't have a lot of fun with New Moon, but as a whole, it's a 5. 100%, it's a good time. I think this is how I would end up rating the series. The top 2, I'm not really sure about. Part of me wants to put Breaking Dawn on top, but Twilight starts it all off, so it was kind of a hard choice. I think this is where I'm landing if I'm gonna tier rank these. And that's not to say that I absolutely hated any of them. Even Life or Death, I still enjoyed that she did change things up enough so it wasn't just a copy and paste of the original story. I think the original series on top makes sense. I'm sorry, even after all this, I don't like New Moon. I really didn't like the 180 in Jacob's personality in Eclipse, but I didn't have a lot of fun in New Moon. That's why I'm still ranking it below Eclipse, which was an unpopular opinion with pretty much everyone else that I talked to. Also, really quick, I just wanted to put right here my final ratings for each book overall, both the regular rating and the fun rating. Thank you for watching. Thank you for coming along with me on my very first time reading Twilight and my very first full series reading vlog. I hope it was entertaining enough. I know I didn't really deep dive into a lot of stuff like other booktubers might. Most of the time when I'm reading a book, I just want to read and enjoy the book. I'm not really going to deep dive into it on purpose. And especially with Twilight, this one feels like you just need to enjoy it. I would like to do more of these, and I have plans for a couple of other series. So as we go on, we'll kind of get into a little bit of a rhythm. But we definitely went on a journey with Twilight. That was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Technically 6 books and 1 novella, but 7 books overall. And I read them back to back. And I'm not sure that I would recommend doing that if you've never read the Twilight series before. Take a little bit of a break because it's a lot to take in. And it feels weird not being in the Twilight universe right now because I've been in the Twilight universe for, I think, the past month. I haven't really read anything else. I've just been living in the sparkly vampire universe and I'm not really sure what to do with myself anymore. Thank you for watching. Make sure you leave a comment. Let me know if you would have ranked the books differently. Which Twilight book was your favorite? Let me know if you've read any of the companion novels. I'd be interested to know what people think about Midnight Sun and Life and Death, especially because I really enjoy the idea of the gender bend novel. I just don't think she executed it very well. And I really just think we need to move on. We need a different storyline. But overall, 5 stars for fun. I will reread these in the future because I already have some people I know that would reread them with me. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. And thank you for watching, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.